You checked your balance this morning, not because you needed to buy anything. You checked it the way you check a wound, to see whether it still hurts. Here is the man who understood that better than anyone. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome. Estates, loans out across the empire, a fortune most senators could not match. And he wrote more about the dangers of wealth than almost any philosopher who ever lived. His enemies called him a hypocrite. He answered directly, "I am not a wise man and never will be. I know what the disease looks like because I have it. A poor man who thinks about money constantly is not free. Neither is a rich one. 7 rules. And the 5th is the one that decides whether money will ever be enough for you. Because right now it is not, and more of it will not fix that." You checked your balance this morning, not because you needed to buy anything. You checked it the way you check a wound, to see whether it still hurts. Here is the man who understood that better than anyone. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome. Estates, loans out across the empire, a fortune most senators could not match. And he wrote more about the dangers of wealth than almost any philosopher who ever lived. His enemies called him a hypocrite. He answered directly, "I am not a wise man and never will be. I know what the disease looks like because I have it. A poor man who thinks about money constantly is not free. Neither is a rich one. 7 rules. And the 5th is the one that decides whether money will ever be enough for you. Because right now it is not, and more of it will not fix that." Rule 1. 2 lies get sold to you about money. The first says it is the goal. Reach the number and the fear stops. The second says, wanting it makes you shallow. One turns you into a chaser. The other turns you into a man who resents anyone doing better and calls that principle. The Stoics rejected both. Their term was precise. Money is a preferred indifferent. Preferred, meaning better to have than not. Indifferent, meaning it is not what makes a life good. Drop the first half, and you get poverty worship. Drop the second, and you get a treadmill. Money is not the point of your life. It is also not beneath you. It is a tool, and you have been treating it as a verdict. Which raises the question you have never actually answered. Rule 2. Ask a man how much money he wants and watch what happens. He says more. He says enough to be comfortable. He says a number, and then immediately explains why that number is not really enough. Epictetus was born a slave and owned nothing, and said wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Read that as arithmetic. There are 2 variables, and you have spent your life adjusting one of them. So name it tonight on paper. Not the fantasy figure, the actual monthly number at which your life works. Most men have never once calculated it, which is why the goal keeps moving. A man who has not named the number will be poor at every income. But naming it exposes something uncomfortable, that some of what you spend was never for you. Rule 3. Look at your last 5 significant purchases and ask one question about each. Would I still have bought this if nobody would ever know I owned it? Seneca watched Romans do this and wrote that many men do not know how much they own, only what other men own. The spending is not driven by desire. It is driven by comparison, which is infinite. You are not overspending. You are paying rent on an audience that never showed up. So for 1 month, every purchase over a certain amount waits 3 days, not to talk yourself out of it, but to find out whether the wanting survives without the audience. About half will not. Now, money that survives the audience still has one more enemy, and it is not spending. Quick one. If you have checked your balance today without needing to buy anything, type "checked" in the comments, just so you can see how many men did the same thing this morning. Rule 4. Most men think they want money. What they want is what money removes. The ability to leave a job without a plan. To say no to work you do not respect. To have one bad month without it becoming a crisis. None of those are money. All of them are what money buys, and they cost less than the lifestyle you are working toward. Every raise you spend converts freedom back into obligation. So separate the two questions permanently. How much do I earn? And how much do I need? The gap is not savings. It is the number of months you could survive without permission. Now, the rule this whole video was built around. Because everything so far assumed that at some point, the fear stops. Rule 5. Here is the thing nobody tells you, and Seneca is the only witness worth having on it, because he actually got there. He had the fortune. He reached the number and passed it. And he wrote that money does not change the man. It magnifies what is already there. A worried man with money becomes a man worried about money. Somewhere in you is the belief that at a certain figure, the tightness in your chest switches off. It does not happen, and the reason is mechanical. The fear was never attached to the amount. It was attached to a comparison, and comparisons scale with you. You have already tested this on a small scale. Every time your income rose, and the relief lasted about a fortnight. You are not chasing an amount. You are chasing a feeling, and the amount cannot deliver it, so the fix is not financial. This week, ask what specifically you are afraid of. Not being broke, the actual scene. Being humiliated in front of someone. Being unable to help a parent. There is always an image underneath, and it is a scene rather than a figure. 2 rules left, and they are what money is actually for. Rule 6. Seneca gave his rich friends an instruction that sounds absurd until you understand it. Set aside a few days each month, he said, to live on the plainest food and the roughest clothing, and then ask yourself, is this what I was afraid of? Not because poverty is noble, because a man who is rehearsed having less cannot be threatened with it, and a man who cannot be threatened cannot be managed. One man has looked at the downside and found floor there. The other never looked. So it stays infinite and prices every decision he makes. Whatever you have never survived in rehearsal keeps its full power over you. So 1 weekend a month, the cheapest version of your life, once, to collect the data. Most men come out slightly embarrassed by how manageable it was. 1 rule left, and it is not about accumulating anything. Rule 7. Look back at the 6, the tool rule, refusing both lies. The number, being able to arrive. The audience tax, spending for yourself. The freedom rule, buying months instead of objects. The 5th, naming the fear the money stood in for. The rehearsal, removing the threat. None of it was about having more. All of it was about becoming a man who cannot be moved by the amount. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and reminded himself daily that none of it was his. Not the throne, not the treasury, not tomorrow. He was not renouncing wealth. He was refusing to be held by it. Money can be lost in a night. So can a job, a house, a reputation. What cannot be taken is how you conduct yourself while it happens. And every rule here was quietly about protecting that. Your challenge is 1 rule, not 7. Rule 2. Name the number. Tonight, on paper, the actual monthly figure at which your life works. Not the fantasy, the working number. Then come back and comment numbered, and whether it was higher or lower than you expected. Most men report lower, and that gap between what they assumed they needed and what they actually need is the most useful thing they have found in years. And Rule 5 assumes something most men cannot do. Sit with a fear long enough to name it, without reaching for something to make the feeling stop. That video is on your screen now. 5 Stoic reasons being alone makes you unstoppable. I'll see you there.